Can you really believe that the Final Fantasy set has been out long enough now that we're already looking forward to the next set, Edge of Eternities? So it's going to be really interesting to see what cards come out of the new set. But focusing still on Final Fantasy, you may have already opened lots of packs, done lots of drafting, collected a certain number of those cards, and there might be some really good rare or mythic cards that you are currently missing from the Final Fantasy set that are making a bit of an impact on standard that might be very good in possibly other formats as well. But usually these really important rare and mythic cards are ones that are versatile, can be used in different deck types, or can make a whole new deck by themselves. So we're going to have a look at these 21 cards from the Final Fantasy set that are cards worth crafting if you don't have them already. So we're going to break down all of those cards and what they do. Let's go. Alright, welcome back to the channel. Let's break down these cards, talk about what they do. We're going to try and keep this as quick as possible, but it's 21 cards, so we have to kind of give them a little bit of time each. So first, starting with the mono-colored, we're going to start with Aerith Gainsborough. So a 3-mana 2/2 lifelink. So relatively cheap creature that has lifelink, works really well in life gain decks. Whenever you gain life, you put a +1 counter on Aerith, so it's got that Ajani's Pridemate ability to start with. But also, when Aerith dies, you put X +1 counters on each legendary creature you control, where X is a number of +1/+1 counters on it already. So if you have some other good legendary creatures in your life gain deck, then you're going to not waste any of those counters as well. And you might have something like Amalia or some other legendary creatures in that deck. But even by itself, it's a decent 3-mana 2/2 lifelink, puts +1 counters on itself, has to be dealt with. Otherwise, it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and gaining you more life each turn. So it's definitely a really good card to have in those life gain decks. The next card is a summon. It's Knights of the Round, and it is an 8-mana card. So you could ramp to this, but it's going to take a little while. But it is an enchantment. It's a creature. That means you can bring it back with Yuna. That means you can bring it back with Zombify for 4 mana. So on turn 4 or 5, you can get this out pretty reliably, as long as you can discard it to your graveyard. And yeah, so it enters as a 3/3 indestructible that makes 3 other 2/2 white knight creature tokens. So that is 9 power, 9 toughness across 4 creatures. And for the next 3 turns, it's going to do the same thing. So it's going to make 12 white knight creature tokens if the opponent doesn't deal with it. And considering it's indestructible, it's a little bit awkward to deal with it. And then on turn 5, you get Ultimate End. Other creatures you control get +2/+2 till end of turn, put an indestructible counter on each of them. On each other creature you control. That's massive. It does take an extra 4 turns after you get it out to get to this, but it makes it a really awesome card, especially in Reanimator style decks. So that's definitely one worth crafting. And that's all for the white cards, to be honest. And the blue cards, there aren't that many that I picked out, but there's Astrologian's Planisphere. So it's a 2-mana artifact. It's an equipment with Job Select, which means you make the 1/1 creature. It's a bit like Mirrodin. It comes in with the 1/1 creature. And so whenever you cast a non-creature spell and whenever you draw your 3rd card each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So this kind of takes the place of Corey Steelcutter, because that's no longer in the Is It Prowess deck. And this isn't Prowess, but it's kind of similar. In a way, it's kind of better, because you're putting +1 counters on the creature rather than just giving it +1/+1 till end of turn. It doesn't have trample, so it's not the same as Corey Steelcutter. And without Monstrous Rage, you're definitely going to feel like you're missing trample in the deck. But there are ways to draw extra cards each turn. Things like Stock Up don't count because you're looking at the top cards and putting them into your hand, which isn't the same as drawing. If you cast a couple of opts, then you're going to be adding an extra +1 counter for each opt and when you've drawn your 3rd card. So this can grow pretty quickly, and even if the opponent deals with the hero creature that it's attached to, you can pay just 2 to attach it to a new creature and start putting +1 counters on that as well. So it's one that's kind of taken place of Corey Steelcutter, even though it's not quite the same, maybe not quite as aggressive, but still worth crafting if you're going to be playing any deck that has lots of non-creature spells. And considering this itself is a non-creature spell because it's an artifact, if you have 4 of them in your deck, then they're going to trigger each other. So you're going to have lots of creatures that are getting +1 counters every turn at instant speed when you're casting instant spells like Opt. So yeah, it's definitely a really good one to have in that kind of prowess style deck. And then we're going to go on to the black cards. Now there's quite a few black cards that I think are really good from the set. We've got Cecil, a Dark Knight. Is it Cecil? Cecil. Depends how you want to say it. So what he does is he's a 2/3 Death Touch creature for 1 mana, which sounds awesome, and it is awesome. But he's also got the Darkness ability, so whenever he deals damage, you lose that much life. And that's not just combat damage, and it's not just damage to a player. So if you block a creature, you're doing 2 damage to it, then you're going to lose that much life. I guess you could probably choose to only do 1 damage because it has Death Touch, I believe. On Arena, I'm not sure if you have to change the settings so it doesn't auto-assign damage for you not to lose 2 life, lose 1 life instead. I'd have to double-check that one. I haven't tried that one myself. Let me know in the comments if you've done that yourself. But yeah, so if your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total, so in standard you're starting at 20, you need it to be 10 or less after it does damage. So if you have 12, it hits the opponent for 2, goes down to 10. You're going to get to untap him and transform him into a 4/4 lifelink. And whenever it attacks, other attacking creatures gain indestructible till end of turn. So it's doing good damage to start with to the opponent. It's kind of awkward to block it. And also, once you dip your life down and take that risk, it's going to help rebuild it pretty quickly because you're attacking with a 4/4 lifelink creature. This won't have indestructible itself, but it will give everything else indestructible. So obviously this can be blocked and killed. But yeah, this works really well in a kind of low to the ground mono black aggro style deck. And the next card is also one that works really well in that. That's Dark Confident. So it's a reprint, but it's it's a 2/1 creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library and you lose. You put that card into your hand, you lose life equal to its mana value. So in terms of synergies, you're not drawing the card. So like you can't have Shieldred to counterbalance losing that life because you're not drawing the card, you're putting it into your hand, which although it's physically the same thing, in rules terms, it's not the same thing. So you don't really want to have big mana value cards in your deck if you're going to do this, because if you have something that's worth 8 mana, you might be losing 8 life at the beginning of your turn. The best thing you can do is draw a land, because then you don't lose any life at all. But if you're drawing another Dark Confident, if you're drawing the Dark Knight, it's only 1 mana, then it's fine. If you're drawing cheap removal spells, that's good as well. You don't really want to have things like Unholy Annex in there, because the Unholy Annex is 3 mana on one side and 5 mana on the other, so you're going to be losing 8 life if you draw that, because that's the mana value of that card. So yeah, a low mana cost, aggressive black deck. This works really, really well. And then we've got Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier. So this is really good in sacrifice decks. It's a 3 mana, 3/3. Whenever it enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, you draw a card. And whenever another creature dies, an opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. If it's the 4th time its ability has resolved, transform Sephiroth. So you're going to be gaining life, the opponent's going to be drained out, you're going to be drawing extra cards as well. So the opponent kind of has to deal with this pretty quickly. And if you're able to get 4 creatures to die in 1 turn, then it becomes a 5/5 flyer And you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life, so that stays around forever, even if the creature does die. And whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice any number of other creatures. If you do, you draw that many cards. So if you've got something that creates lots of tokens that you can sacrifice, you're going to be drawing lots of cards, you're going to be draining your opponent a lot. And there are many ways of doing that at the moment. So Sephiroth is a really powerful card that needs to be dealt with, otherwise it's going to take the game away by itself. Next one we have is Summon Primal Odin. It's a 6 mana enchantment creature. So it's a 5/3 for 6 mana, which isn't great. It destroys a creature when it first enters, which balances out the low stats. And then it has the second chapter, which is it gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. Now, quite often, people don't really read this card and realize that if you don't block it, you lose. It doesn't matter if you have 100 life. It doesn't matter what else is going on at all, unless you have like the Platinum Angel out. If this creature does any combat damage, you lose the game. So you might be able to do something where you give Odin flying or trample or menace to make it much harder to block. But quite often the opponent doesn't necessarily read the card. If you don't read the card, you're going to lose. If it doesn't manage to do that damage on turn 2, then on turn 3 you do get to draw 2 cards, and each player loses 2 life, so it kind of replaces itself a bit. So again, you might want to have this as some kind of reanimating deck to zombify, or put it with Yuna or something. With Yuna, it gives them trample, right? Am I remembering that right? So they do have trample, lifelink, and ward 2. So if you put it in a Yuna deck, it's going to get that trample anyway. And it's a 5/3, which makes it slightly harder to block as well. Unless they happen to have something with 5 toughness. So yeah, a good way to win the game when they're not expecting it. And in fact, another card that works really well with Odin is our next one, Ardin the Usurper. It's an 8 mana creature that's a 4/4. And the reason why it has such terrible stats is because it gives other demons you control, menace, lifelink, and haste. But also at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can exile a creature card from your graveyard, and you make a token that's a 5/5 black demon. So it comes in as a 5/5 black demon with any other abilities it has. Also has menace, lifelink, and haste. So if you have Odin in your graveyard and you cast Ardin or reanimate Ardin with the Rite of the Moth, Zombify, whatever it might be, then you can bring in Odin at the beginning of combat that turn. You destroy a creature. It has menace as well, so it's harder to deal with. Destroy a blocker. On your next turn, it still has menace, it still has lifelink. It's probably worth attacking with it anyway. Menace is going to make it harder to block, and you might win with Odin. So Ardin can do lots of really cool things, especially if you have it in a demon deck anyway. You have things like Valgavoth that you might want to reanimate as well, although Valgavoth already has lifelink. But giving it menace and giving it haste, even if it's just a 5/5, it's probably still worth it. And it also works with some other cards like Jumbo Cactar really well, but we'll get to that one in a minute. So we have Esper Origin, starting with green cards. It's a 2 mana sorcery, Surveil 2, gain 2 life. That doesn't sound that amazing by itself, but if you cast it from your graveyard, and it has flashback for 4 mana, so you can cast it from your graveyard on, turn 2 or turn 3 if you're ramping. So if it's cast from a graveyard, you exile it, put it onto the battlefield, transforms as the summon. And if it comes in as the summon, you get to reveal the top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, put it into your hand. You have just surveilled 2, so there's a good chance you can make sure the top card of your library is going to be a permanent card. So you're drawing an extra card pretty much when it enters. You're going to add 2 green mana on turn 2, which means you're going to be much more able to cast bigger creatures, maybe other summons on that turn. And then other creatures you control get +2/+2 and trample till end of turn, so it makes a good aggressive card. You can draw the thing you want on turn 1, and play it on turn 2 with extra mana on turn 3, give it +2/+2 and trample. So again, something like a Jumbo Cactar giving that trample isn't a bad idea. So that's something to do with Esper Origins. That's a really good card in a reanimated deck as well, because you're surveilling, possibly putting things in the graveyard that you want to reanimate later. Okay, all right, then we've got Tifa Lockhart, a very dangerous creature, a 2-mana 1/2 trample. Whenever a creature has 1 power and trample, you know there's going to be some trick to it. It has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you get to double a power until the end of turn. So if it's a 1/2, you're going to make it a 2/2 by playing a land. It doesn't sound that amazing, but if you have something that puts out additional lands, if you have Evolving Wilds or Fable out where you can sacrifice them, find another land, that's another land entering. If you have something like the Chocobo that doubles landfall triggers, it's going to get very big very fast. And also if you have any Cultivate-like spells or Glimpse the Core, you can cast your sorceries, cast your other things that will put lands onto the battlefield as well. And if you have something like the Aftermath Analyst that's going to put loads of lands back on to the battlefield at the same time, then Tifa's going to go absolutely huge and do 64 damage, 128 damage, whatever it might be. So obviously it has trample to make sure that works, otherwise they'll just block it with a 1/1. So it can be a very aggressive card. If your opponent plays it, you're probably going to want to kill it before it gets too big. But it's a really good one in a aggressive green landfall deck. And then we have the Chocobo. This is the one that doubles those triggers. So you can look at the top card of your library at any time. 3-mana 3/2 creature, which I didn't say. Look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast bird spells from the top of your library. So that helps you get the lands out you need to do. If a land or bird entering causes a triggered ability of a permanent to trigger, it triggers an additional time. So Tifa will double, then double again. So it'll go from a 1 to a 4. If another one goes up, it'll go from an 8 to a 16. And then obviously it gets huge. So yeah, very good in other Chocobo decks. We've got lots of other ones that gain power when land enters. They're not on the list because I think pretty much all of those are commons and uncommons. So you can make a decent deck out of Chocobo's landfall being kind of aggressive. But yeah, so that makes them all even better. Then we've got another summon. A lot of these summons are really good. They do so many things. So this is a 5-mana 7/7 Reach Trample, which is a pretty cool creature. You get to mill 5 cards when it enters. So if you're reanimating, that really helps you get more things in the graveyard. And then on Chapter 2, you get to return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This can work with Tifa, but I think Tifa normally would be in a lower cost, more aggressive deck, and Titan might be in a bigger cost, ramp or reanimator style deck, like with Yuna possibly. But anyway, you can bring lots of land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So that's majorly ramping, because you might have 5 or more lands in the graveyard already. And then on Chapter 3 till end of turn, another creature you control gets trample and +X, where X is the number of lands you control. So let's assume you probably have 5 when you're casting Titan, although you might not. This might bring back another bunch of lands, and then next turn you might have a creature that's getting maybe +10 or and trample, or more if it's later on in the game. The only thing with these summons, which isn't ideal, is the fact that they sacrifice themselves when they get to turn 3. So you play this for 5 mana. It mills the card, so you can't attack. It has summoning sickness. On turn 2, you can attack with it. On turn 3, if it's still alive, it sacrifices itself. So you only really get one good attack with this, unless it has haste or something else. So it's good. It's maybe not as good as it could have been if the creature stays around, but your opponent is kind of pressured into dealing with it. If they don't, another creature is going to get that +X and trample. So if they have removal spells, they might have to try to kill it before it returns all the lands or gives the extra ability on turn 3. So yeah, it's definitely one that is worth having in those kind of decks, ramp decks or landfall decks or reanimated decks. And then we've got Jumbo Cactar. So this is one of those really funny meme cards. So it's a 1/7 creature for 8 mana. But whenever it attacks, it gets plus 9999 until end of turn, so it becomes 10,000 power, 7 toughness. So it doesn't have trample, obviously, because that would be too good. But you can possibly give it trample, you can give it menace, you can give it flying. You can do things like self-destruct it, fling it at the opponent after attacking. So there's lots of fun things you can do with it. It works really well with Ardin. You can bring it back as a 5/5 creature that still gets the plus 9999 when it attacks. So it's going to be a 10,004 power and 5 toughness menace lifelink demon with haste. That works pretty well. I don't know how consistent it is, but I've seen it done quite a bit, and it is kind of funny to see. So yeah, maybe more of a meme kind of silly card, but there are things you can do with it, and it's pretty fun. So I'd craft it if I didn't have it already. Okay, then we got Vivie. Is a 3-mana 0/3 creature, and it has the ability to add X mana in any combination of blue or red, where X is its power. Activate only during a turn, only once each turn. Otherwise, it would be so easy to break. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a +1 counter on him, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So it works really well in an Is It Prowess kind of deck. You cast lots of things like Opt and Sleight of Hand, and you are casting all kinds of non-creature spells, maybe even the Planisphere, the blue one there. He's going to get really big, and you're going to be able to get lots of extra mana to cast lots of extra spells, and it's going to keep pinging the opponent. There are some things you can do with combos with Vivie as well, which I haven't really done much myself yet, but I think that would be pretty fun to do. Lots of things you can do with him. So definitely one of the best cards out of this set, and worth crafting if you don't have it already, if you do like that style of play. Then we've got Terra, Magical Adept, a 3-mana 4/2. Whenever it enters, mill 5 cards, put 1 enchantment card mill this way into your hand, which might well be a summon. There's so many good summon cards that are enchantments. And then you can pay the extra mana to tap Terra, exile her, and return to the battlefield transformed as Esper Terra. It's kind of funny to me that it's Esper when this is red and green, because Esper is literally like every other color, black, blue, white. But it's just the name. It's kind of funny. But yes, you get to create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control. It gains haste. If it's a saga, put up to 3 lore counters on it, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And you get to do that for that turn and 2 turns after that. So it works really well with lots of other summon creatures. And then on chapter 4, you get to add 10 mana, that's 2 of each color, and exile it, then return it to the battlefield face up, which means you can, if you want to, tap it again. It's going to, let's see, it's not going to have haste, right? So you can't tap it immediately unless you give it haste some other way. I believe it just returns to the battlefield, so it'll have summoning sickness again. But you can obviously do it again next turn if it doesn't have haste, or you can just give it haste. So yeah, so it can basically create lots of extra copies of summoning creatures and add those abilities on, so they can do all their different things they do with those lore counters. So it's very powerful in that kind of deck. We've got Lightning Army of 1. It's a 3-mana 3/2 first strike, trample, a lifelink creature. So very good for aggressive Boros decks. Obviously, the lifelink helps to offset some things as well. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, bearing in mind it has first strike, so it will do damage before your other creatures if you attack with everything. Until your next turn, if a source would deal damage to that player or a permanent they control, it deals double that damage instead. So if you're attacking with lightning, but also another 3/3, you're going to do 3 damage from lightning in the first strike, kind of first damage. And then your other 3/3 creature is actually going to do 6 damage instead of the 3, dealing double damage. Or if it does it to a permanent, if it does it to a blocker, then it will do double damage to that as well. And then what you could do after hitting with lightning is you could cast lots of things. You could cast some shots, some lightning strikes. You do Boros, is it Boros Charm? The one that does 4 damage to an opponent. There's the Battle, which is going to rotate out soonish, but that does 4 damage to an opponent as well. So they're all going to do double damage. So lightning doesn't have haste, but you could cast her on turn 3, attack on turn 4, and then on turn 4, well, if you had some shots and some lightning strikes, you're going to be doing lots of damage that's doubled either to the player or to their permanents. And you can also do things like fling, like a slick shot show off or something, and that's going to do huge amounts of damage as well. So yeah, very aggressive Boros burn deck, effectively. Then we've got Kuja, Genome Sorcerer. It's a 4-mana, 3/4 human wizard. At the beginning of your end step, you create a tapped 0/1 black wizard creature token with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And if you control 4 or more wizards, you get to transform Kuja. Now, Kuja is a wizard himself, and he's making one at the end of that turn, the end step, when he comes out. So that's 2 wizards already. If you've already cast 2 other wizards or own 2 other wizards before you cast Kuja, then he's going to transform immediately at the end of that first turn. And then he becomes a 4/6 wizard, where if a wizard you control deals damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. So a bit like lightning, but different. So now you have all these, potentially, all these 0/1 black wizard creature tokens that are going to do 1 damage to an opponent, but it's going to be doubled, so they're going to do 2 damage to an opponent every time you cast a non-creature spell. Now, Kuja doesn't make any more of those creatures once he's transformed. He doesn't do the extra pinging damage himself, but it does mean that if you're just casting removal spells or casting non-creature spells that create the wizards, like the Black Mage's Rod, is it? There's a few other spells you can cast that will create those wizard token creatures that are non-creature spells themselves. So you can ping the opponent for lots of damage pretty quickly when Kuja transforms. So it's a really powerful card to use in that kind of Rakdos burn deck. Then we have Yuna. This is definitely one of my favorite cards from the whole set. It's a 5-mana, 3/5 creature. During your turn, Yuna and enchantment creatures you control have Trample, Lifelink, and Ward 2. So when you play Yuna, she has Ward 2 immediately. At the beginning of your end step, so basically straight away, you return up to 1 target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So when it dies, it's exiled rather than just being sacrificed and going to the graveyard. Now you could, if you wanted to, pair this with things like Omniscience, and then you're going to get Omniscience at the beginning of your end step, but then your opponent gets a turn to remove it. So it doesn't work necessarily that well with Omniscience, although I'm pretty sure you could still win. If they don't have enchantment removal straight away, you could deal with that. But it works really well with summons. So if you have something like Knight of the Round, Yuna can bring that back. It's going to create all those extra Knight creature tokens, or Bahamut, which we're going to cover in a bit, is a very good thing to bring back with Yuna. But there are lots of other enchantment creatures, like the Overlords are really good ones as well. You can have that, and you're going to get those creatures back with Trample, Lifelink, Ward 2, at least on your turn. So it's going to be very, very aggressive and very powerful. So I do like decks like that. And yeah, definitely one worth crafting if you don't have it already. And then we've got Sin, Spiral Punishment. Now, Sin is Big Bad from Final Fantasy X. It's a 7-mana, 7/7 flying creature, which seems pretty standard, but when it enters, and when it attacks, you exile a permanent card from your graveyard at random, then create a tapped token that's a copy of that card. If the exile card is a land card, you repeat this process. So everything that's a land could potentially come from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's tapped, so you can't use it straight away. But it will basically keep going until it finds something that's not a land. So if you only have lands, it's going to ramp like crazy. If you have anything else, like Omniscience, Portal of Pyrexia, any like big expensive things, then you can get that from your graveyard onto the battlefield, a Valgavoth, a Traxxas, whatever it might be. There are lots of permanent cards that you might want to bring on to the battlefield at random. That's going to give you loads of extra value, considering this happens not just once, but also whenever Sin attacks as well. It's going to have to be dealt with, otherwise you're going to get possibly some really big free permanents from your graveyard to the battlefield. The only thing is it's random. You could possibly try to manipulate that in a way where you're only discarding one permanent card that you really want to bring back. If you're careful, if you don't just like mill like crazy, if you just draw and discard or something. Or surveil, so you're only putting things in the graveyard that you want to. You could put one specific thing in the graveyard just to get that to appear on the battlefield. So yeah, there are ways you can work around that, but basically a big card that needs to be dealt with pretty quickly. And then we have Absolute Virtue, another good one to be reanimated, just because it costs 8 mana. But it can't be countered, which is one good thing. And it has flying, which is also pretty useful. But you have protection from each of your opponents. Now that's something that I think most people don't really appreciate exactly how much of a difference that makes. Especially new players don't really understand protection necessarily that much. So protection, it says here on the card, well, next to the card, you can't be dealt damage or enchanted or targeted by anything controlled by your opponents. This does not protect your creatures or your other permanents that are on the battlefield. It protects you. So if your opponent casts something that does 3 damage to target opponent, they cannot target you. And even if it said deal damage to all opponents and it's not targeting, it still can't deal damage. It also means creatures that are attacking you next turn will not do damage to you. This is the same effect that the One Ring gives you only when you cast it and only for 1 turn. You get protection. So this you have forever, as long as Absolute Virtue exists. And if you have counter spells or ways to protect it, then that protection ability that it gives you is going to stay around for a long time. So it's a good way to stall out the game. It means you can't be killed. It means you can't be killed by aggro because they can't get around the virtue. If they can't kill it, they literally cannot do anything to you. So it's a really good one to reanimate and a really good one to protect and keep going. Now we also have a summon, Bahamut, which is 9 mana, colorless. It's a 9/9 flying dragon, which is pretty cool. You destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent when it enters, and then again on the next turn. You get to draw 2 cards on the 3rd turn, or the 2nd turn after it enters. And then you have Mega Flare. So if you haven't already done enough damage, considering it's a flying 9/9, and it's had 2 turns to attack already, on the 2nd turn, on the 3rd turn. On the 4th turn, I mean, it sacrifices itself, which isn't ideal, but it deals damage equal to the total mana value of other permanents you control to each opponent. Now, it's probably had a good chance to do 18 damage by itself already, but if it hasn't, if you have some other big creatures out, if you're using something like Una, if you have Una, that's 5 damage it's going to do. If you have Knights of the Round, that's another 8 damage. If you have another Bahamut out, it's going to do another 9 damage. So the Mega Flare is something that requires dealing with before it happens. Once it happens, there's not much your opponent is going to be able to do. They're going to get hit for a lot of damage in the face. So you might want to try using Bahamut in some kind of Reanimator deck, just because it's 9 mana. Getting there is kind of difficult. Most decks are probably going to try and kill you before you get there. But if you do manage to reanimate it, or you can even do things like Manifest Dread. I think you can get it out on turn 2 or 3, technically. But then this kind of works better once you have other big things out, so you might not want to get it out on turn 2 or 3. I mean, it destroys things and draws cards, and it's a big 9/9 flying creature anyway, so I guess on turn 3 that is good. And it gives you at least 2 more turns to cast some of the big things, so Mega Flare does more damage. So generally, yes, a pretty good card. So I think, considering it's also not legendary, you could have a couple of these out at once if you're reanimating things. It's definitely a good one to include. And that's basically the 21 rare and mythic cards I think are probably the most worth crafting, depending on what kind of decks you like to play. It's interesting there's no specific mono red cards here. Let me know if there are any particular cards that you think are Very versatile, worth crafting. Either, you know, a deck revolves around them, or they can be used in many different types of deck. Let me know in the comments if you can think of any other ones, and you know, I'll add them in the description or something if I think they're really good. Now, normally in these kind of videos, I'll also cover the lands, and having a look at the lands, the rare lands that we get out of Final Fantasy, I haven't been that impressed. Like, it's okay, it's good. I might include one or something, depending on whether the deck type works for that. So, like, with the white one, return, you have the sorcery, adventure, 5 mana, return up to 2 target artifact and/or enchantment cards from your graveyard to your hand, and then you can still play the land, because once you do an adventure, it kind of exiles, then you can play it. It comes in tapped, which is okay considering the benefit you get. So you do get a 5 mana, you know, return 2 things to your hand sorcery in addition to having the land. So it's good to have that extra thing. But it depends. Like, if you really have a deck where you want to do that, maybe it would be so much nicer if it brought it to the battlefield. But obviously, that's going to be too good. And then like the blue one, you know, you can 6 mana. The opponent mills half their library. It can be good if you're using a mill deck. If not using a mill deck, then this land is just worse than an island, to be honest. Unless you're using one that relies on towns, because it has that subtype. But again, it's probably better in limited, or probably not better in standard, focusing on town so much. The black one, maybe, you know, in a sacrifice deck when you've got Sephiroth or whatever, sacrifice an artifact or creature if you do draw 2 cards, and then you still have to play the land. So I guess it's good to have that just to help you, you know, refill your hand, get the benefit of sacrificing something later on. I might include 1 or 2 in a sacrifice deck, possibly. The red one, it makes one of those wizard creature tokens for 3 mana. I might include that, especially if I'm doing some kind of like Kuja deck where you're trying to make lots of wizards. Other than that, like, it's not going to be in any aggro deck. It's not going to be in most red decks. I don't really see the point necessarily. For the green one, we have 6 mana, create a colorless hero creature token, put +1 counter on each land you control. So let's say you probably have 6 land at this point. You're going to make a 7/7 creature for 6 mana, and then you get to play the land. Like, it's good, it's okay. If you have something that doubles the number of +1 counters, something that triggers when counters are added or remove counters, you might want to use that, but generally it's not that impressive. You wouldn't go in every deck. And then you've got Bahamut Garden, so green, blue land, enters tapped. You have the ability to pay 7 mana, transform it, cost 1 less for each town you control. So, okay, if you have lots of other towns, it's going to make it cheaper. It becomes a 5/4 flying vehicle with crew 1. Whenever it attacks, you draw a card. That's not till end of turn. It's not like those other creature lands, the restless ones that turn into a creature till end of turn. This one stays a creature, which means it's no longer a land. So, I mean, there might be a time when you want to use that, but it's not one I'm going to see in like every blue-green deck. And then we've also got Clive's Hideaway. So this is a colorless land that has Hideaway 4, which is a bit like Fight Rigging, had a Hideaway thing. When it enters, you look at the top 4 cards. That's what the 4 in Hideaway means. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. And then you can just pay 2 mana and tap 5 to play the exile card without paying its mana cost, but only if you control 4 or more legendary creatures. If it didn't have that extra ability, or if it said 1 legendary creature or 2 legendary creatures, I would probably include this in a few different decks. But if you have to have 4 or more legendary creatures on the battlefield at the time, it's going to make it so much harder to cast the thing. Kind of means you want to have like lower cost legendary creatures to get lots out early. But then with Hideaway, because you're playing something without paying its cost, you generally want it to be something big and powerful. So this could work in a deck, but it's not one I'm going to say to craft, to add into other things. Also being colorless kind of makes it a little bit awkward in some decks when we have quite a few cards, especially from the Final Fantasy set, that are 2 color cards. We don't want to add too many color requirements on the card and then include a colorless land unless it's going to really help us in some other way. So I wouldn't even bother about the lands if you don't have them. generally they're not amazing. It's not like the channel lands we had from Kamigawa that were really good. It's not like any other 2-color land is probably going to be a better use of a rare wildcard than any of those. Like the Surveil lands are probably going to be better for you if you're playing any deck that isn't just 1 color. Anyway, let me know what you think of all these rare and mythic cards, what you think of the lands, and what cards you think are worth crafting. And we'll see if there's any other ones I missed. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. And by the way, if I haven't mentioned it already, which I haven't, we did get to 10,000 subscribers on the channel, which is really cool and really exciting. I still don't actually know what I want to do as a celebration of that fact. So let me know in the comments if you can think of anything you think is fun to do when you get to 10,000 subscribers, what I can add or offer or do to help keep growing the channel. Thank you for everyone that's subscribed so far. It's really awesome. I do have some ideas, but I'll let you know later on in an upcoming video when that is decided. But if there's any other good suggestions in the comments, I might take those on board as well. So anyway, thanks for watching this video to the end, and I will see you in the next one.